My name is June Whitaker. I am 66 years old. I am a widow. And 1 week before my grandson turned 18, he said something that ended the family I spent my entire life protecting. For 5 years after my husband Frank died, I believed I was holding everyone together. I believed love meant showing up, helping when I could, making life easier for the people I cared about. I told myself that family was built on sacrifice, and that if I gave enough, things would stay whole. I was wrong. It happened on an ordinary morning in my kitchen. I was making blueberry pancakes, my grandson Dylan's favorite, the same breakfast I used to make when he was little and would sit at the counter swinging his legs, telling me about school and friends. That morning he leaned back in his chair scrolling on his phone, barely acknowledging me. Then he said it. "Grandma, you know what the best birthday gift would be. If you just died already so we could finally split the money." He said it calmly, casually, like he was commenting on the weather. My hand froze over the pan. The pancake burned, but I did not move. The words hit my chest and settled there, heavy and cold. I turned toward him slowly, hoping I had misheard. "What did you just say, Dylan?" He sighed, annoyed like I was wasting his time. "Come on, Mom and Dad talk about it all the time. You are getting older. You will probably end up in a care facility anyway. Wouldn't it be easier for everyone if things just moved along?" Moved along. Like my life was an inconvenience standing between them and their plans. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I reached into my apron pocket and pressed the record button on the small device I always carry. A habit I picked up after becoming a widow. Proof matters when people decide your memory is optional. Dylan finished his breakfast, grabbed his keys, and walked out without another word. By sunrise, I was not planning a birthday party. I was planning my exit. Stay with me until the end, and as you listen, tell me the city you are watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Before you judge my decision, you need to understand who I was to this family long before that morning in my kitchen. When my husband Frank died 5 years ago, everything changed, not just emotionally but practically. He had been the steady one, the planner, the man who believed deeply in family responsibility. When he was gone, I stepped into a role I never officially accepted but slowly became trapped in. I became the backup plan. At first it felt natural. My daughter Sarah was struggling. Her husband Brent had just switched jobs. Dylan was entering private school. There were tuition bills, car payments, small emergencies that always seemed urgent. I helped once, then twice, then regularly. $8,000 a month. That number did not happen overnight. It grew quietly. Mortgage support, credit cards, Dylan's allowance, sports fees, medical bills they promised to repay once things stabilized. They always said temporary, just this once, we will make it up to you. Temporary turned into years. I told myself this was what mothers did, that supporting my daughter meant supporting my grandson, that keeping everyone afloat was better than watching them struggle. I downsized my own needs without telling anyone. Fewer trips. Fewer luxuries. No complaints. What I never said out loud was that I was afraid. Afraid that if I stopped giving, I would stop mattering. Afraid that without my help, the calls would slow down. The visits would become rare. The affection would fade. So I kept giving. I paid for Dylan's school because I wanted him to have opportunities. I covered their mortgage because I wanted stability for my family. I stepped in every time something went wrong because I believed love meant preventing pain. But somewhere along the way, my support stopped being gratitude and started being expectation. When people only call you to ask for help, that is not coincidence. That is information. I just refused to read it. I truly believed I was keeping my family together. I did not realize love had turned into a subscription. And I was the one paying every month. That morning did not feel important when it began. It felt familiar, comfortable. The kind of routine you trust because it has never betrayed you before. I woke early, as I always do, and moved through the kitchen on instinct. Coffee first. Then the bowl for pancake batter. Blueberries washed and waiting. Dylan had loved blueberry pancakes since he was a child, back when he would sit on the counter and ask endless questions while I cooked. I thought that version of him still existed somewhere. He sat at the counter that morning, taller now, broader shoulders, phone in hand. He barely looked up when I greeted him. His spoon clinked against the bowl, sharp against the quiet of the kitchen. That is when he said it. "Grandma, you know what the best birthday gift would be? If you just died already so we could finally split the money." There was no anger in his voice, no hesitation, just certainty. For a moment my body did not respond. My hand hovered over the pan while the batter darkened. I felt heat rising, not from the stove but from my chest. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had moved in without warning. I turned slowly and asked him to repeat himself, not because I needed to hear it again, but because part of me still believed I must have misunderstood. He sighed and rolled his eyes. "Grandma, do not make this dramatic. Mom and Dad talk about it all the time. You are getting older. You have been tired lately. You will probably need a care facility anyway. Wouldn't it be easier if things just happened naturally?" Naturally. I asked him if his parents really felt that way. He shrugged. "Dad has already been looking at places. There is one in Florida that is not too expensive. Mom says once you are there, you probably will not even notice we are gone." I stood there listening to my grandson talk about my life like it was an inconvenience on a schedule, like something that needed to be managed so it would not interfere with his plans. I did not shout. I did not cry. I reached into my apron pocket and pressed the record button on the small device I always carry. I did it quietly, carefully, because instinct told me this moment mattered. Dylan finished eating, complained that the pancakes were burning, grabbed his keys, and walked out the door. No apology, no second thought. I scraped the ruined pancakes into the trash and stood alone in the kitchen, surrounded by years of photographs and memories that suddenly felt staged. That was the moment I stopped asking why, and started asking how long this had been happening without me seeing it. That night, I did not sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the quiet like it might explain itself if I listened hard enough. Frank's pillow was still beside mine. 5 years gone, and his presence still lingered in small, stubborn ways. The faint trace of his aftershave, the dent where his head used to rest. He had always been the one who noticed patterns, the one who warned me when kindness started turning into obligation. I told myself I was honoring him by holding the family together. I reached into my nightstand and pulled out the leather journal I had been keeping since Frank died. I told people it helped me process grief. That was only partly true. What it really held were moments I did not want to say out loud. I flipped through the pages. Sarah asking for money but canceling visits. Brent insisting I co-sign paperwork because it was easier. Dylan joking that I was his inheritance plan. Comments about my memory, my age, my energy. I had written notes beside them. He did not mean it that way. They are just stressed. I am being sensitive. Reading it now, the truth felt impossible to ignore. This was not love, it was management. I was not being cared for, I was being monitored. My generosity was no longer appreciated. It was expected, budgeted, counted on. When people only show up when something is needed, that is not coincidence. That is a pattern. And patterns do not lie, even when we do. I wrote one final line at the bottom of the page. I am not their mother or grandmother anymore. I am their resource. 3 days later, I learned just how far they were willing to go to control it. 3 days after that morning, I drove to my daughter's house with a folder of paperwork on the passenger seat. Sarah and Brent were refinancing their mortgage again. The interest rate had gone up. They said they could not afford the legal fees, so I offered to help. I told myself it was practical. Easier than watching them panic. Easier than listening to promises that things would be different next time. Their house was a 2-story place in a quiet neighborhood just outside Charleston. 8 years earlier, I had helped with the down payment, $40,000. I remembered standing in the empty living room back then, imagining holidays and birthdays and grandchildren running through the halls. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah's car was there, lights were on inside. I rang the bell. No answer. I rang again. Still nothing. I hesitated, then used the spare key they had given me years ago for emergencies. After all, I was the reason the house existed in the first place. The moment I stepped inside, I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Not raised, not angry. Low, careful, strategic. I stopped moving. Brent was speaking. His voice was calm, the same tone he used when talking about investments or contracts. We need to be smart about this. We cannot just wait around hoping she dies on her own. She could live another 20 years. Sarah answered quickly. And if she needs long-term care, that will drain everything. Those places cost a fortune. We could lose it all. Lose it all. They were talking about my life like a failing asset. Then Dylan's voice cut in. So what is the plan? Brent did not hesitate. We start pushing her toward assisted living sooner rather than later. Frame it as concern, safety. Once she is there, we get power of attorney. Claim she is not fully competent to manage finances. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. Sarah sounded nervous but convinced. How do we do that? She is still sharp. Everyone knows it. Not everyone, Brent replied. I have been documenting things. Moments she forgets details. Small slips, building a file. Dylan laughed softly. Like what? Medical records mostly, Brent said. Her old doctor retired. Now she sees someone new. I go with her, I guide the conversation, mention memory concerns, decision-making issues. It plants the seed. My stomach turned. They were not waiting for my death. They were planning my removal. Then Brent said the number. Between the house, savings, and what your father left her, we are looking at close to $3 million. $3 million. I almost laughed out loud. The truth was far smaller. Most of what Frank and I built had already been spent supporting them. School tuition, cars, vacations, emergencies, monthly support that never stopped. But I had never told them. I never wanted them to feel guilty. So they planned around money that did not exist. Sarah said it softly. That should be enough for all of us. Dylan's college, a car, stability. Dylan sounded pleased. Yeah, plenty for what I want. I backed away from the doorway without making a sound. I left the house the same way I entered, unnoticed. Sitting in my car, hands shaking on the steering wheel, I realized something that changed everything. They did not want me gone. They wanted me controlled. Alive, quiet, declared incapable, useful until the last dollar was gone. I did not cry on the drive home. I made a list. Because this was no longer about hurt feelings. This was about survival. The morning after I overheard that conversation, I woke up with a calm I had not felt in years. Not denial, not hope. Clarity. I did not confront them. I did not accuse anyone. Instead, I decided to test what I already suspected. I wanted proof that what I heard was not a moment of panic or careless talk. I needed to know who they really were when money was threatened. I started with Sarah. I called her mid-morning and told her I had met with my financial advisor. I said he was concerned about my spending and suggested I reduce the support I was giving the family. She did not ask how I was feeling. She did not ask if I was scared. She asked one question. How much are you cutting? I told her I might need to reduce the monthly support from $8,000 to $2,000 for a while. There was a long silence, then panic. That will not even cover the mortgage. Mom, we are counting on that money. You cannot just change things like this. Not can we help you, not what do you need. Just what will happen to us. 3 hours later, Brent called. His voice was smooth, professional, concerned in the way people sound when they want control. He said advisors often scare older clients. He offered to look at my accounts for me. Then he suggested asset protection strategies, early transfers, trusts, moving money into family hands before it could be used for care. All framed as protection. I thanked him and said I needed time to think. 2 hours after that, Dylan called. Grandma, Mom said you might be having money problems. Does this mean you are not giving me the $50,000 for my birthday? That was it. No concern, no hesitation. I offered a smaller gift, something practical. He laughed. I do not need practical. I need a car. Everyone is expecting it. By the end of that day, I had everything I needed. The speed of the calls. The identical concern for access, not safety. The shared solution of control disguised as care. When people love you, their first question is, are you okay? When people use you, their first question is, how much? By that evening, I was no longer guessing. I was documenting. The following Monday, I stopped handling this like a family problem and started treating it like what it truly was. A legal risk. I met first with my financial advisor, Gary Holt. He had managed Frank's and my accounts for over a decade. He knew exactly how much I had left and exactly how much I had already given away. When I told him what I overheard, he did not look surprised. "June," he said quietly, "this happens more often than people want to admit, especially when money and age collide." That sentence alone told me everything. By the end of that meeting, we had created a protected trust, one that could only be used for my medical care and daily living expenses. No early transfers, no family access, no loopholes. That same afternoon, I met with my estate attorney, Linda Pierce. She listened. She asked careful questions. Then she said something I will never forget. "You are not cutting them off, you are cutting off their access to harm you." We updated my will, completely. The beneficiaries were changed. A no contest clause was added. If anyone tried to challenge my competency or the estate, they would lose even the right to object. On Wednesday, I met with Dr. Elaine Morrow, a geriatric psychiatrist recommended by Gary. She tested my memory, my reasoning, my decision-making. At the end of 2 hours, she smiled and said, "You are not only competent, you are remarkably clear for someone under this kind of pressure." I walked out of her office with documentation my family never expected. By Thursday evening, I had a folder that told my story better than any argument ever could. Recordings, journals, medical evaluations, legal protections. I was not preparing for revenge. I was preparing for defense. And that made all the difference. Friday evening arrived quietly, Dylan's 18th birthday. I invited them all to dinner: Sarah, Brent, Dylan. I kept my voice warm on the phone. Calm. Almost cheerful. I wanted everything to feel normal. Predictable. Safe enough that no one suspected what was coming. They arrived right on time. Sarah brought a small bouquet of grocery store flowers. Brent carried a cake from an expensive bakery, the kind that looks generous but arrives without effort. Dylan walked in already scanning the room, waiting for the moment gifts appeared. We ate pot roast, mashed potatoes, and vegetables from the garden Frank and I had planted years ago. The table was full, but the conversation was thin. Every sentence felt rehearsed. Every smile felt temporary. They were waiting. Halfway through dessert, Sarah leaned forward, folding her hands like she was bracing herself. "So, Mom, how did your meeting with the financial advisor go? Are things looking better?" I set my fork down slowly. "Clearer," I said, "much clearer." Brent's posture shifted. "What kind of clarity?" I took a breath. I did not rush. I wanted every word to land. I realized I needed to protect myself, so I made some changes. Dylan finally looked directly at me. "What changes?" "First, I moved my remaining assets into a protected trust. It can only be used for my care and living expenses. No one else can touch it." The room went silent. I continued. "Second, if I ever become unable to manage my affairs, a professional guardian will step in. Not family, a licensed service with oversight and accountability." Brent's fork slipped from his hand and hit the plate. "June, that seems extreme. Family should take care of family." I met his eyes calmly. "I agree. Family should protect each other. Family should not plan to take control by force." Sarah's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I reached into my pocket and placed the digital recorder on the table beside the cake. "I am talking about the conversation you had in your kitchen last Tuesday. The one where you discussed having me declared incompetent." No one spoke. I pressed play. Brent's voice filled the room. Calm, clear, damning. "Once she is there, we can get power of attorney. Claim she is not fully competent." I stopped the recording after a few seconds. 27 minutes, I said softly. "That is how long you discussed my life like it was a transaction." Sarah began to cry. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. I slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside are copies of the recordings, my journal, medical evaluations from 3 professionals confirming I am of sound mind, and the updated legal documents. Brent swallowed hard. "What legal documents?" "A new will." Sarah's voice shook. "Who did you leave everything to?" "Charities, hospitals, organizations that help people without expecting something in return." Dylan stood abruptly. "You cannot do that. That money is supposed to be ours." I stayed seated. That money is mine, I earned it, I saved it, and I will decide where it goes. Then I said the sentence that finally broke the illusion. And the $8,000 a month I have been giving you ends tonight. Sarah gasped. Mom, we cannot afford that. You will adjust, I said. You are capable adults. Brent's voice rose. You are destroying this family. I shook my head. No, you destroyed it when you taught your son that my death would be a gift. I stood and walked to the front door. I opened it and let the cool evening air fill the room. I think it is time for you to leave. They did not argue. They did not apologize. They gathered their things in silence. As Dylan passed me, I looked at him one last time. Happy birthday, I said. I hope you received exactly what you earned tonight. When the door closed behind them, the house was quiet. For the first time in years, the silence felt honest. I thought the confrontation would be the end of it. I was wrong. The silence lasted 2 days. No calls, no messages, no surprise visits. For a brief moment I allowed myself to believe they had finally understood that I was serious. Then Monday morning came. My phone started ringing just after 7. Sarah first, I let it go to voicemail. Then Brent. Then Sarah again. Over and over, the screen lighting up while I made my coffee and stood at the window, watching the garden move gently in the morning breeze. I finally answered on the 13th call. Mom, please, Sarah said, her voice shaking. We need to talk. This has gone too far. What part feels too far to you? I asked calmly. The part where you planned to take my independence, or the part where I stopped you? She cried, said it was a misunderstanding, said they were worried about me, said Dylan was young and did not know what he was saying. I listened. Then I ended the call. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, I saw a woman in her 40s holding a clipboard, professional, polite, trained to look sympathetic. Behind her stood Sarah, Brent, and Dylan. The woman introduced herself as Cara Bennett from Elder Welfare Services. She explained that concerns had been reported about my mental state, erratic decisions, paranoia, sudden financial changes. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. Please come in. We sat in my living room like strangers pretending to be family. Cara asked careful questions about my daily routine, my finances, my health. I answered clearly, directly, without defensiveness. Brent interrupted twice, suggesting I was confused. Sarah tried to finish my sentences. Then I placed the recorder on the table. Would you like to hear what they discussed when they thought I was not listening? Cara hesitated, then nodded. I played a short section. Brent's voice, Dylan's voice, words about power of attorney, about control, about money. The room went still. Cara turned to my family. Is this accurate? No one answered. After another 20 minutes, she closed her clipboard. Mrs. Whitaker, I see no evidence of cognitive decline. You appear competent and aware. What I do see is documented concern of potential financial exploitation. Sarah went pale. Cara continued. I will be filing a report advising no further contact unless requested. Any continued interference may be considered harassment. When they left, no one looked back. I locked the door and leaned against it, my legs suddenly weak. They had played their last card. And it failed. For the first time since Frank died, I knew this was truly over. After that morning, I did not wait to see what they would try next. I moved quietly. 3 weeks later, I sold the house, not because I needed the money, but because I needed distance. Every room held a version of me that no longer existed. A woman who confused sacrifice with love. A woman who believed being needed was the same as being valued. I closed accounts they knew about. I changed my phone number. I redirected my mail. I did not announce any of it. I simply stepped out of the life they had grown comfortable draining. The only thing I left behind was on Dylan's desk. A single envelope. Inside was a short letter, my final accounting, and one document copied clean and clear. The medical evaluation confirming I was of sound mind. The letter was brief. You already received your inheritance. You spent it while I was alive. This is what accountability looks like. No anger, no explanation, no goodbye. I did not disappear to punish them. I disappeared to protect myself. to give myself the chance to live without being monitored, managed, or measured by my bank balance. I moved south to a small coastal community near Savannah. A 2-bedroom cottage with sunlight in the mornings and quiet at night. No history attached to the walls, no expectations waiting at the door. For the first time in years, I belonged to myself. And that changed everything. 7 months later, my mornings look nothing like they used to. I wake up without checking my phone. There are no urgent messages, no financial questions disguised as concern, no quiet pressure waiting for me before I even step out of bed. The silence is not heavy. It is gentle. I live in a small coastal cottage now, in a community where people choose to be together, not because they need something, but because they enjoy each other. My closest neighbor, Helen Price, lets herself in every Tuesday morning for coffee. We sit at the kitchen table and talk about books, travel, and the small things that actually make a day feel full. One morning, Helen brought the local paper and set it between us. There was a short article, 3 sentences. Dylan had been arrested for driving under the influence. His car was impounded, no mention of family, no rescue story waiting in the background. I felt nothing. No panic, no guilt, no instinct to fix it. And that was how I knew I'd healed. I had worried for years that cutting them off would break me, that I would feel empty or cruel or alone. Instead, I felt steady, clear, present in my own life for the first time since Frank died. I volunteer twice a week now. I walk every morning. I cook when I want to, not because someone expects it. I choose my days instead of reacting to them. Sometimes people ask if I regret walking away from my family. I tell them the truth. I regret that it was necessary. I regret who they chose to become. But I do not regret choosing peace over control. I did not win by ruining them. I won by refusing to disappear. If there is one thing I want you to take from my story, it is this. Love is not measured by blood. It is measured by behavior. Family does not mean access. Care does not mean control. And concern does not require ownership of your life. For a long time, I believed that giving more would make people love me more. I believed that if I solved enough problems, paid enough bills, stayed quiet enough, I would earn safety and loyalty in return. What I earned instead was entitlement. If someone only shows up when they need something, that is not love. That is dependency. If someone talks about your future without you in the room, that is not concern. That is planning. If someone benefits from your silence, they will fight hard to keep you quiet. Protecting yourself is not cruelty. Setting boundaries is not revenge. Walking away does not mean you failed. Sometimes it means you finally listened. If you are older and supporting family, keep records, write things down, speak to professionals early. Make decisions while you are strong, not when someone else decides you are weak. And most importantly, build a life that does not depend on being useful to others to feel worthy. The woman my grandson wanted gone did disappear. But the woman who took her place is stronger, calmer, and finally free. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever seen money change the way people treat family? Tell me your city in the comments. If this story moved you, like and share it so someone else knows they are not alone. And on the screen now, I am leaving 2 other stories from this channel. They may surprise you. Thank you for staying until the end.